Reviewing Ericeira, Portugal. Let's get into it. If you follow me on Instagram, you might really think that the waves are firing all the time here and I'm constantly scoring, but we all know that Instagram is a highlight reel of our lives. So let's uncover some truths about Portugal. So, variety of waves, absolutely 10 out of 10. You have a wave here for every swell direction, specifically in a 7-kilometer radius. Maybe more. I don't really know how much that is. I'm still learning my ratios. Specifically, just in Ericeira, you have a wave for every swell direction, every wind direction. You have a huge variety of waves in Ericeira, which is why I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10 for wave variety. My typical kind of go-to saying is that if you're living in Portugal and you want to surf every single day, you can. If you have a car, you can drive up to 2 hours. You don't care. You can surf a wave every single day in Portugal. Wave quality. When the waves are good, it's world class. Okay. So wave quality is going to get an 8 out of 10. It's not getting a 10 out of 10 because a lot of the time there's just big storms. It can be offshore every day for an entire month and absolutely firing, but it can also be 3 meters, north wind, choppy and crappy for a month straight as well. So that's why it gets an 8 out of 10 for wave quality. Is it open to various levels? This is where Ericeira starts to get conflict because there are waves for beginners, not a lot, but there's a few. And when the waves are small here, it can be very, very beginner friendly. For beginners to travel here, I would say it's a good experience. Europe is different. It's fun. I think if you have the time to come to Ericeira as a beginner, you might surf, you might just want to travel and see Europe, do it. Say if you're an intermediate surfer, and you're looking to improve your surfing, Ericeira might be pretty difficult for you because the crowds, and if your level of surfing isn't high, then you're gonna have a lot of difficulty getting waves. For advanced surfers, I would say it's a pretty good place when the waves are good. But again, the locals, it's very hard to get waves when the waves are really good. Like half the time, my boyfriend and I, we're good surfers. He's an amazing surfer. I'm a pretty decent surfer, and when the waves are absolutely firing, sometimes we don't even bother because we won't get a wave. That's something to consider, because if you're a really advanced surfer, you see how good the waves are here and you want to come to Portugal, but don't come if you only have a week to be here on a surf trip. I always tell my friends that ask me, they say, I want to come to Portugal. The waves always look so fun. When should I come? And I'm like, well, you should wait till you see a swell and good winds. And you should probably give yourself at least 3 weeks here to really give yourself the chance to get a good solid amount of sessions. Don't come here for just a week on a whim without a swell, because you could just arrive during a storm and not have 1 day of surf. Or you could have 3 incredible days and not get a single wave because of all the locals. So in terms of waves for various levels, 10 out of 10, but is it ideal for all of those levels? Not a 10 out of 10. I hope that explanation kind of was somewhat clear. Proximity of waves, 10 out of 10. Everything is pretty close, but you still need to rent a car if you come to Ericeira, especially if you want to surf multiple waves. If you're a beginner or intermediate and you're staying at a surf camp and you're just going to walk to one beach every day, you don't really need a car. That's probably going to be more ideal because cars can be expensive to rent here. If you are a lower level, you're probably just going to want to stick to one spot where you feel comfortable and there's maybe a surf school around. You're not going to want to go to those more difficult, higher level waves, but the proximity, they are pretty close together. Not walkable, but close. Crowds. On my rankings for crowds, 1 being the absolute worst and 10 being nobody out. If you asked me 4 years ago, my ranking would be a lot different than it is now. My ranking for crowds for Ericeira, 1 being absolutely horrible, don't even paddle out, it's going to get a 3. When the waves are good, it's going to get a 3. If you know the locals, you might be okay. You might get to sneak a wave or 2, but a lot of my friends get yelled at a lot. Even girls, they don't care. They will yell at you. You're clearly not from there and you're being disrespectful in the lineup. Crowds are pretty heavy here when the waves are good. 4 years ago would have been a different ranking, but now it's crowded. Temperature. The waves are the best in the winter, December, January. It's freaking cold. I wear a 4.3 and booties almost every day. We have good weather sometimes randomly, and you can get away with a 3.2, but for the most part, you're in at least a 3.2 all year round. 4.3 in boots in the winter. Sometimes a hood in the mornings. Can be quite chilly here. Winds, I can't give the winds a ranking because they just change too much. If again, like I said at the beginning, if you have a month of all offshore for the whole entire month, then you're blessed and you're stoked and you're surfed out. But you can also just have a month of straight north wind and that kind of sucks. Conditions, kind of just explained, it's a little all over the place, depends on the storm and the swells. Accommodation options, huge amount of accommodation options. Ericeira, they're calling it Baliceira, is becoming really popular. Lots of Airbnbs popping up everywhere. There's so many options of places to stay. So 10 out of 10 for accommodation. There's surf camps, there's hostels, there's Airbnbs, there's like rooms to rent. You have everything you could imagine of places to stay. And the overall prices of Ericeira, again, if you asked me 4 years ago, my ranking would have been a lot different. 1 being very expensive and 10 being super, super cheap. My current ranking for 2023 for Ericeira overall prices, a 5. And the only reason it's a 5 is because of how drastically it's jumped. So it feels a little bit more expensive than it should be because of that big jump, but it's still pretty affordable. Unfortunately, with all the tourists coming here and Portugal becoming so popular, without the Portuguese minimum wage being raised up, all the locals are forced to move inland and away from the coast, and expats and tourists are buying houses all over the coast, and Ericeira is just popping off. So I don't want to say this is a negative review, but if you've been thinking about coming to Portugal, give yourself a big chunk of time. Make sure you're talking to somebody or you're coming here with somebody who's been here before. Understand the swells and what type of conditions you're going to want to look for. Come here with the intention of spending a good amount of money on an Airbnb and renting a car. If you want to get good waves, you're going to want a car if you're an advanced surfer. And be nice to the locals. The locals are amazing people. The Portuguese have welcomed me and my boyfriend with open arms the past couple of years, but we are respectful in the lineup. We're good people. So don't come here as a tourist just taking waves and being rude, because that won't go over well for you here. But that being said, the waves are incredible, the country's beautiful, the people are beautiful, and the food is amazing. Would I come back to Portugal? Yes, I would. But when I come here, I stay here for the whole winter. So it's a bit different than just a week surf trip here and there. If you're going to do a trip to Europe, make it long. Make it worthwhile and spend your time, meet the right people, and make sure you see a good swell on the forecast before you come. All right, next time I chat to you guys, I'll be in Bali. So maybe we'll do a review on Bali and the Mentawais.